Do you think there's something significantly different between us and them that like justifies to farm them but not us?
No, I don't think so.
Like how many more animals do you want people to torture and kill in your name?
None, frankly. I think.
How are you doing today, bro?
Doing well. How about yourself?
Happy to hear you're doing good. I'm doing good. Where are you from?
I'm from Boston, Massachusetts. I flew down here a couple of days ago and I'm living here for 2 months.
Oh, cool, man. How are you enjoying PR?
It's great. I've only seen a couple parts of the city, but I'm excited to explore the rest of what this place has to offer and really try new things. I'm super excited.
Awesome, man. Hope you have a good time. So let me ask you something, man. Do you think animals deserve moral consideration, or you think it's fine to like abuse animals, stuff like that?
I do not think it's fine to abuse them. I believe they deserve fair treatment the same way we treat other human beings. And that's as simple as it is.
Awesome, man. Do you personally eat animals?
I do, yes.
You think that's morally problematic, or you think it's fine to stab animals, eat them, stuff like that?
I think there is certainly a bit of hypocrisy in that. I do believe I try to make my best effort to make sure that the produce, the chicken and the steak that I buy is very healthily sourced and sort of raised. I know there's a lot of very poor practices in terms of the growth of chickens, for example, and industrial chicken farms, for example. But I do my best to make sure everything is locally sourced and is grown with the right feed and the right cattle. But like I said, I do recognize the hypocrisy in that, though, in terms of being a meat eater myself, but also believing that animals deserve fair treatment.
Okay, I see. But from what you said, it seems to be the case that you think there is like a humane or an ethical way to do it. Well, can you sort of like walk me through how would be like a humane way to like kill animals and stuff like that?
Yeah, and I'm unfortunately not too familiar with the process of sort of what that supply chain looks like. I do believe that going back to the idea of them deserving fair treatment, I do believe there's a way to incorporate that in the supply chain in general. I'm not much of an expert on the food industry in general and the livestock industry more specifically, but I think I would defer to people who know more about it, like obviously you guys, and would take advice from people who know better and have been doing it for a long time.
I see. So you mentioned like a few things. You mentioned like locally sourced. You mentioned like some people talk about free range, stuff like that. Let's say we were to do that, that treatment, but with humans. Let's say we were to switch animals with humans. Would you be willing to pay for human sandwiches if it was locally sourced and free range and all that stuff?
If I were a cannibal, yes, but I'm not, and that's not really part of civilized society. I do recognize the point you're trying to make, though, in terms of if we were to flip the scripts, how would we want ourselves to be treated if we were being grown and eaten and consumed? So I do understand where you're coming from, but
do you personally think it would be like ethical to do that if we were to do it in a quote-unquote humane way? We were just raising humans, but they're just stabbing them in the neck when they were like 15 years old and turning them into meats? Or would you say it would be wrong to pay for that? It would be like immoral, that we shouldn't do that?
Because it's humans, I would say it's immoral, but I think that's the society we live in, and sort of it's a very fine line you have to walk in terms of that idea. But because they were human beings, I would say no, it's not ethical.
I see. What do you think is true of animals that if it was true of humans would make it okay to do the sort of things we do with animals but with humans?
It's a good question. I don't know. I think I'll use like dogs and cats, for example, animals that are more sort of domesticated, and I obviously treat them with a very high level of respect. But if it's a cow or a chicken or a pig, that's something that is meant to be sort of consumed in the long run, there's certainly not that level of same respect that people would have for dogs and cats, for example. So that's a tricky question. I honestly don't know the best.
You said something. Do you think that's a way to describe them, or someone?
What do you mean? You
said something when referring to pigs and cows. Do you think it's something is the right pronoun?
Not the right pronoun. No, not whatsoever.
Someone, right?
Yeah.
Someone in their experience in the world they want to live.
There's a soul. There's I mean that's I think a philosophical point that you could go down and talk about that for hours, but I mean they exist, they have a purpose, and I think there's a lot more we can do as society in general to make sure we're sort of striking the fine line between respecting them, but also being a meat-consuming society, which we've been for a long time now. I think that's something important to consider as well.
Have you heard about veganism?
I have, yeah.
What do you think it is? Like, how you define it if you had to?
I mean, just obviously not eating meats or products that come from animals. I would say.
Would you say it's just dietary, just has to do with what we eat, or you think it encompasses more than just diet?
I think to begin with, it's a dietary thing, but I feel like you can expand it a lot further, just to how you treat animals in general, and going beyond just your idea of what I'm going to eat on a day-to-day basis.
I see. So different people define it in different ways, but I don't see it as a diet, and most people do. The vegan society does, and so it is more of a moral philosophy.
Yeah.
It's basically like a logical extension of the idea of human rights. Personally, we share common ground in believing that humans deserve like universal rights to not be enslaved, like tortured if they're and not killed if they're not innocent. Obviously, there's exceptions like self-defense and stuff like
Sure.
that. But personally, you agree that humans deserve rights, and it's wrong to like use Holocaust humans for sandwiches and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Vegans think we should extend that circle of moral consideration to animals, because we don't see any morally significant difference between us and them that justifies doing that to them, but not to us.
Yeah.
Do you think there's one? Because you suggested that there might be an ethical way to farm animals. Do you think there's something significantly different between us and them that like justifies to farm them but not us?
No, I don't think so. And it's a tricky question, just figuring out how to walk that fine line and be quote unquote moral about executing an animal, which obviously is not a good thing. But I think for a long time now we've been reliant on the protein that comes from eating meat, and obviously there's other ways to get protein, but it's been a large part of society, and it's sort of ingrained in the way that we think about how we get fuel to power our own bodies. But it's a very slippery slope, and I think there needs to be more awareness around the topic. And the bare minimum that we can do, I think, as people, when I say we, I mean people who eat meat, is to just make sure if we are eating meat, we're not overdoing it, we're not eating too much, we're only eating what we need to sustain ourselves. We're making sure that others...
What do you think? What do you mean by... So a couple of things there, because first of all, when you said that you couldn't think of a morally significant difference between us and them that justifies doing that to them, it sounds like you have vegan values there, because like if it is the case that you don't see a morally significant difference between humans and animals, it should follow that you should treat them with respect, humans and animals.
Sure.
And that should include not stabbing them for sandwiches. But then you said something about eat what we need. What would we need? What do you think we need from animal products that we couldn't find elsewhere?
I think just in general limiting our intake of protein supplied through meat. And obviously, like I said, there's a lot of other ways to get protein, but I think not overdoing it and not eating too much, and maintaining a pretty healthy diet as a meat eater, between obviously eating meat and either other sources of protein.
So why wouldn't you see it as morally obligatory to, your meat intake, lowering it down to zero, or your animal product intake? Why wouldn't you see it as morally obligatory to go vegan?
Well, I mean, I personally enjoy eating meat, and so I would not do that. My father is a vegan, and so I understand where he's coming from. And a lot of his reasoning for becoming a vegan in the first place was just seeing frankly the horrors in the meat supply chain and how poorly animals are treated. And he'll eat turkey once a year on Thanksgiving. It's the one time of the whole year he eats meat. He does consume a lot of fish, sort of pescatarian, I guess is what you would call that. But yeah, I mean, I think you guys are asking all of the right questions, and it's super important.
I want to ask you like for something you said, because you said that you like it, therefore you're gonna continue eating it. So you think that because something provides taste pleasure to you, it is justified? In other words, do you think taste pleasure justifies this sort of thing, like stabbing,
No.
committing violence towards animals? So
No, I don't think so.
Do you agree that it's like
I agree.
not a good justification, right?
Yeah, 100%. I definitely agree. Yeah.
So are you then admitting that there's no justification for what you're currently doing to animals, and you should be vegan, or
That's
what?
not the justification in terms of the taste and like saying I like the taste. I think for me it's I have a very protein heavy diet, and I try to put good things into my body. And if I am eating meat, I would rather pay more to make sure it's organically sourced. Obviously, local is a big part of that too. And there's a lot that you can buy here in Puerto Rico that I'm learning about in terms of making sure where you're buying that meat from, those farmers are following sustainable practices and being as humane as possible they can towards the animals that they're raising.
What would stop you from being vegan? Because it sounds like you can't really justify. You say like the taste pleasure doesn't really justify. You admit that their lives are more important than our taste pleasure, right?
Yeah.
What do you think would stop you from going vegan? Wouldn't you see it as like your duty to go vegan when you can go vegan?
I think in terms of what I put in my own body, the protein is obviously the biggest part. I know there's a lot of alternatives. You know, you can sort of buy a lot of what we would consider meat products, but they're plant-based. You know, plant-based hamburgers, plant-based sausages. You can eat a lot of beans to sort of supplement your protein diet. But I think for me, I've tried many of those alternatives, and I found that my body does not react in the same way that it would to normal meat. And so that's sort of the biggest reason why.
What do you mean by that?
Just I don't feel like I'm on a typical diet. I feel like I don't get as much sort of organic protein as I would by just eating the regular meat alternative. And I know there's been a lot of innovation in that space, and there are some, like, I eat a lot of soy products, if you obviously know what soy is. And so that's a way that I've tried to sort of supplement my meat consumption and eat less meat that I normally would consume. I just don't think that it's quite at the level in terms of what I am expecting and what I would like to put into my body to sustain myself. So that's sort of the biggest reason why I haven't made more of a permanent switch, if that makes any sense.
So have you taken a look at the science? Because like the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics has determined, they have a peer-reviewed statement based on all the available evidence that plant-based diets not only are nutritionally adequate, but they provide health benefits, including for athletes. Like as long as you're consuming enough calories, you're not going to have any kind of nutrient deficiencies.
Right.
You do it is recommended to supplement B12 or consume foods fortified by B12. That's the one micronutrient that you couldn't find naturally in plants, but it's easily supplemented nowadays. Like you don't need to stab animals. So if it is the case that you could find a way around it, would you say it would be like morally superior to be vegan? Instead of like continuing to pay for animal abuse and stuff like that?
I 100% think so, and you know, like I said, there's a lot of alternatives, and if you're not getting B12 from that, you can obviously take a vitamin supplement or something along those lines. And I think as a society in general, we should all do a better job of being more conscious about how to replace regular meat consumption with other alternatives. And I do my best to try and do that myself in my own personal diet and recommend it to friends and whatnot. And my dad, who's the vegan in my house, has sort of put me on to these different alternatives in terms of something else rather than just eating meat. And so I do think we need to take a step in that direction, but it will certainly take time and a lot of education behind this is what's wrong with the supply chain, and this is what we could do to improve it in terms of treating animals.
Can I ask you something to test your logic on that? Let's say like all else was equal, but instead of eating animals right now, you were eating humans. Would you say that the right thing to do would be to go vegan overnight, or would you also see it as a process where it's a little inconvenient to stop eating humans because I'm afraid of losing my muscles, stuff like that? Or would you go vegan overnight in that case?
Overnight, which again is the hypocrisy in it. So I totally understand where you guys are coming from, but yeah, that's a good way to think about it and just sort of phrase it. But
so if in the human context you would do it overnight, and you said that you couldn't see any morally significant difference between us and animals that justifies doing that to them, not to us, it follows that you should act in the same way in both cases, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
So let me ask you one last question, man. Like, how many more animals do you want people to torture and kill in your name?
None, frankly. I think there's other ways to do it in terms of being, very open and very transparent about how these animals are raised and how they're actually slaughtered. I personally, as a lover of animals, I don't want any of them to be killed just to supplement meat. But again, the hypocrisy in it, because protein intake from meat is good for us in terms of part of our diet. And it's a big part of a lot of sort of things that we've grown accustomed to eating over time. So I'm definitely trying to do my part.
It definitely sounds like you have vegan values, man.
Thank you. Yeah.
And I'm glad you admit that it is coming from a place of hypocrisy, right? I just hope you reflect on it. You put yourself in the victim's position and ask yourself, like, if I was the victim, how fast I wouldn't want myself to go vegan, right? And I think the answer is like overnight.
Yeah, no, it's a good point.
But anyway, man, it's just between you and your conscience now, man.
Yeah.
I hope you reflect on it, you think about the victims. I would suggest watching like the standard practices, what is done to animals. There's a documentary called Dominion. You can go to watchdominion.org. It shows you like the standard practices horrific. You admitted that standard practices are horrific, but I think animals deserve rights, and that includes right not to be stabbed, even in like free-range local farms. I think they also reserve that right. But anyway, thanks for your time, man.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah,
best
of luck with you guys.
Thank you, man.
Yeah, I hope more people are willing to talk to you because it's super important stuff you guys are working on.
Thank you, bro.
Thank you.